So normally when we do the "oh really" banner, that means O'Reilly's about to say something outrageous and even dumber than he normally does. But in this case, whoa, he's going the opposite way. He's going to say something somewhat reasonable, which makes me go, oh really? All right, let's watch.
There's no doubt he broke the law, that Mr. Bundy broke the law. There's no doubt it's been adjudicated in court after court after court. Every legal expert we've had here on The Factor said the same thing. The man broke the law. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Now, throughout our history, as I mentioned last night, there have been conscientious objectors who broke the law, and I think Mr. Bundy may fall into this category. He doesn't believe the law is just.
We always hear that we're a nation of laws, but it turns out we're only a nation of laws when it suits our federal overlords. You know, they like to pick and choose what laws they're going to enforce, and that's not fair. So I understand the frustration from the people on the ground there.
Okay, but you wouldn't encourage them to do anything to provoke a confrontation?
No, I wouldn't provoke a confrontation, but I would definitely defend, you know, myself if the federal government came and took up arms against me.
Sure, but that's not going to happen.
So now that's, of course, a supporter of Cliven Bundy talking about how even though clearly Cliven Bundy is breaking the law by not paying grazing fees, by having his cattle graze on land that is not his, that's our land, federal land, and he owes over $1 million to us, the American taxpayer. He says, yeah, but, you know, and I'm not going to provoke anything, but he shouldn't pay it. And by the way, I brought my guns, and I'm part of a militia. Now, I know you claim you're not provoking anything, but when you say at gunpoint, give us the cattle back, well, some could interpret it that way. But I'm glad to see that Duck Dynasty has joined the fight. So now O'Reilly's going to challenge him even further and compare this to Occupy Wall Street. Interesting.
What's the difference between Mr. Bundy and the Occupy Wall Street crew that doesn't respect the federal government for a variety of reasons and feels it has the right to go into a city like Oakland and burn things down? What's the difference?
Well, the difference is Mr. Bundy's providing a service to the nation. He's a cattle rancher. He's providing the country with beef. The Occupy movement, to this day, I still don't know what they're providing the country with.
But they're both dissenters. They're both dissenting what they feel is an oppressive system. That's what they have in common.
Okay, yeah, they have that in common. I guess the way they're going about it would be different. I haven't seen any reports from the Bundy Ranch that, you know, any supporters of his are destroying property or being arrested like you saw with the Occupy movement.
Okay. Legitimate point.
No, not legitimate point. You were actually doing a decent job of questioning him until that very last part. First of all, the Occupy movement didn't destroy property. The cops that came in and busted up their camps destroyed property. So let's just be clear about that. And he says, well, they got arrested. Well, you guys showed up with weapons and you didn't get arrested. So isn't that the disparate treatment by the government rather than what you guys did? And he says, oh, well, they weren't serving the country. Well, okay, that's a funny assumption. How do you know they weren't serving the country? I guess he assumes that they were all bums. Yeah, the left wing, they don't do anything, whereas we got cattle, right? All of those were totally wrong. Now, you want to know what the real difference is between Occupy Wall Street and the militia over at the Bundy Ranch? Weapons. The militia has weapons, and Occupy didn't. And by the way, the militia threatened and intimidated the government into giving the cattle back. Occupy didn't get any results. And a lot of people who are both progressives and conservatives that are believers of the Second Amendment will say, you see that? Weapons make a difference. Now, I often say that you can't fight the government with weapons. If they came to that and you were in the woods, you'd be in a lot of trouble. But here's an interesting case where I have to admit that a bunch of bullies threatening government workers and threatening to shoot them, basically, did work. And then they have the temerity to turn around and say, the problem is Occupy, not them. Could you imagine if Occupy had weapons? Could you imagine if they were down in Zuccotti Park in New York, let alone Oakland, let alone everywhere else, and they came with semi-automatic weaponry, they came with, you know, AK-47, whatever it is. They came with whatever weapons the militia came with, right? Yes, I don't know weapons that, well, oh, Cenk, you know, that's not the right kind of weapon. I don't give a damn, right? So, oh, Fox News, the government, everybody would have been up in, ironically, arms Like, how dare you look at these militant leftists? They're trying to do a communist takeover of the government. No, they were peaceful. They had no weapons. So again, some progressives that are gun advocates might say that that was their mistake. I don't think so. I think that the right wing in this country gets undue respect. The left wing gets no respect whatsoever. That if those guys at Occupy had showed up with weapons like the militia did, they would have gotten slaughtered. The government would not have hesitated to raid them, cause a confrontation, and then blame it all on them. You see, man, if a single left-winger shows up at a single protest with weaponry, the reaction is going to be very different than when right-wingers show up with weapons. So now, finally, O'Reilly probes how much this militia member, Scott Shaw, is interested in that kind of confrontation.
Do you believe the federal government is oppressive to you, to your family?
Oh, definitely. I mean, just the Patriot Act, the National Defense Authorization Act, we're losing ground via our liberties and freedoms on a daily basis.
Now, do you feel you're going to have to defend yourself with firearms down the road?
I see that as a very good possibility, yes, sir.
Now, that frightens a lot of people when you're that candid.
Well, that frightens me.
But you are ready But there's going to come a point, though, when you're going to have to make a decision whether to stay in the system that we have here or go out of the system.
Exactly.
And what's going to be the, in your mind, what would be the catalyst for you to go out of the system and fight your own government?
That's really in the government's, the ball's in their court. If they wanted to impose martial law, do something with the banking system, just more infringements on our rights, I mean, it's going to come.
You think it's going to come?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, so he has a guest on, and look, O'Reilly did a good job of probing and asking those questions. But overall tolerant and at times would say, oh yes, that's the difference between Occupy Wall Street and your movement, giving them some degree of legitimacy. Of course, Sean Hannity gives them a ton of legitimacy and even eggs them on his program, so he's a million times worse than O'Reilly in this instance, right? Now imagine if it was a new Black Panther that was on O'Reilly's program or on any Fox News program, and they asked him the question, do you think, let's say during the Bush years, that you're going to have to fight your government with weaponry? And he said, yeah, I'm going to go grab a gun and I'm going to fight the government by any means necessary, and I think that's coming. The reaction at Fox News would have been, oh my God, these militant, violent, radical blacks going outside of the system. That would have been the reaction if a new Black Panther Party said, I'm going to grab weapons and fight the system. Come on, keep it real here. There's massive hypocrisy. Again, though, to be fair, O'Reilly with a good line of questioning there, which did surprise us.